Let's talk it over with my healthcare analyst. Paul Seegert's back on the line this morning. Paul, welcome back to Iowa Radio. It's always great to talk with you. Good morning.
Thanks, Jeff. Glad to be here.
What do you think, Paul? I mean, hospitals, medical systems mandating vaccinations against COVID-19 among their employees. They're already short-staffed. Are you worried about this backfiring?
Well, I think that's why some of them have held back. More will do it now that the formal approval has come through for Pfizer. Many have held back. I've had conversations with CEOs of hospitals, especially smaller hospitals and rural hospitals, where they have no intention of doing it because they know for sure they wouldn't be able to staff their facilities. And then if you go into certain sectors in the healthcare industry, elder care facilities is a good example. 27% overall are unvaccinated healthcare workers around the country, but it's even higher in certain geographies and certain subsets of the industry. So it will no doubt put a lot of pressure, and for that reason, some will not do it.
It's so interesting to me, Paul. By the way, I just got a text on the American Topper and Accessories text line, 515-989-1040. I'm hearing from nurses all over the place. This text says, Jeff, I'm one nurse that'll be quitting. We're already at crisis levels of staffing, in my opinion. Some nights there are 3 nurses working in a local, well-respected emergency room. It's not safe. Paul, what's interesting to me is, now, full disclosure, I'm vaccinated, and I tell listeners I think they should get vaccinated, but I'm not for vaccine mandates. Because, for example, I think if you there's widespread publicity that you've got to force healthcare workers to get vaccinated against COVID-19, that does the opposite of what you wanted to do. It creates more questions in the public mind. What are your thoughts on that, Paul?
Well, I think we could get a lot with the mixed messaging has not helped, and the fact that we still deny largely as a country in our conversation about it that people have natural immunity. I think they could get more buy-in from healthcare professionals and from the population at large if they would simply acknowledge it. Another study Emory University just put out in the last few weeks shows that folks that have COVID and recovered, some of them have longer lasting, more durable immunity, broader immunity against variants than that they would get from the vaccine. And you can test for it. So if they were to go to these same healthcare workers and say, we need to protect our customers and each other, so we'd like you to get vaccinated or we'd like you to submit to testing to see if you have natural immunity, they would likely get more buy-in. But to many of these healthcare professionals know science, and they know that they had COVID, and they may have even been tested for antibodies or T cells and know for sure that they have natural immunity, in which case, when there's a scarcity of vaccine globally, why should they take it when it could be used for someone who could actually need it? I'm not anti-vax. I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but I had COVID, went through our whole office. People were tested. We were tested. We're fine. I don't need the vaccine. So, and that's not an anti-vaxxer comment. It's just fine.
No, Paul, you're nailing it, because the last time you and I talked about this, I got so many messages, and I continue to get them even today, Paul, that say, why do people that have had COVID need to get vaccinated? And the healthcare industry and our public officials, they seem to want to avoid that question, don't they? Because it seems to me like they're worried that would discourage vaccinations. But I think you and I agree that being honest with people won't discourage vaccinations.
If anything, we need to do things that increase trust. We've lost a ton of it through this process by telling the public things to influence their behavior for a desired outcome, not always telling them the truth, or the facts of the matter, or the science. So we've lost a lot of trust, and now you're trying to go to, all the way back from, and it's so political, but all the way back before this administration, you had people that are currently in the new administration saying they wouldn't get vaccinated. Now they want you to get vaccinated. And there's so many examples of that we've lost trust. You don't gain it by ignoring science. I think we would gain some by acknowledging it, being even-handed about it, making and educating people as to why they should do it and what the options are. And it's a free country. If they don't want to work there, employers have the right to make mandates legally. That's well established.
Yeah.
Whether you're for or against it, they can. And those nurses in this example can choose not to work there. But I think it would be a much smarter path to especially when they're facing these shortages of staffing. But even were that not the case, just follow the science. Don't just say you are. Acknowledge national immunity, give them an opportunity to show that they have it, and let that be an option as well.
Paul, you in your earlier answer, you talked about that vaccination rates are varying widely by region. I got a theory on that, but I don't want to just throw it right at you. I want you to tell me, why do you think that is?
Well, because politically it varies by region.
Yeah.
And this has become run by political science,
right?
Not actual science. And there's a large amount of distrust. I mean, and you have siloed conversations going on.
Right.
If there was a really interesting study not long ago that came out, and people that watched certain news outlets, like left-leaning news outlets, that I won't say CNN, but CNN, when polled, they believe there's a 40 to 50% chance that if they get COVID, they'll be hospitalized with serious life-threatening, and it'll be a serious life-threatening situation, and that's not accurate.
Right.
And that's like a 10x exaggeration of reality. But that's what they believe. We've stoked a ton of fear in certain portions of the population to encourage certain behavior rather than just share the reality of it.
Well,
We could have got so much better results by focusing in on the high-risk portion of the population, protecting them, and had a much less disruptive experience.
Right.
Everyone else.
See, I didn't have to throw my answer at Paul because Paul had the answer. That's exactly right. Healthcare analyst Paul Seegert, he gets great reaction every time I have him on the air, and it just makes sense, doesn't it, what he has to say? Paul, thanks very much for joining me.